Hey there, micro friends. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Micro. As always, I'm so happy that you're here with me. And if this is the first time you're listening to Let's Talk Micro, well, thank you for choosing it as one of your podcasts. And hey, I know that the holidays are approaching, you're probably traveling, you're taking some time off. So I'm doing a very short episode. I thought it would be a great way to end the year by doing an episode of MicroMinutes. And if you have been listening for a while, we recently started doing this MicroMinutes episodes. In the episodes, we break down one microbiology topic in under 10 minutes. They are short, focused, and straight from the bench. And by now, we have released two of them. The first one was episode 212, Microminutes, sometimes McConkey lies. And then the second one was Microminutes, when bacteria break the rules. So as I said, they're very nice, they're very short. You get, a piece of microbiology knowledge, in 10 minutes. So today's episode is titled Don't Let PEA Fool You. And of course, for the benefit of everyone, let's start with some basics. And as you know, PEA, agar, which is phenylethyl alcohol agar, is a selective medium, right? When we go to school, we learn that it is selective for gram-positive organisms, right? It will grow gram-positive cocci, it will grow gram-positive rods, while inhibiting gram-negative rods, this is done because the phenylethyl alcohol interferes with membrane function and DNA synthesis. And this leads us to today's myth, which is if it grows on PEA, it means it's a gram positive. What do you think about that? I'm just going to pause for a second and let you think. Well, if you're thinking that that's not true, then you are correct. PEA inhibits many gram negative organisms, especially Enterobacterialis, but inhibition is not absolute. So basically, what it's doing is reducing the competition. And when you think about it in the bench, right? So you get these cultures that they're very polymicrobial, and then you have your standard setup, which is blood, chocolate, McConkey, PEA. So you know that at least with McConkey in a polymicrobial infection, right, you're giving those gram-negative rods a chance to be isolated because gram-positives and gram-negatives will grow on blood and chocolate. So you kind of have that play there for the gram-negatives. And then you're adding this PEA to give your gram-positives a chance, right? Sometimes, you have 2 or 3 Enterobacterialis, and maybe, you have a Staph aureus that you're going to work up. So that PEA gives you a chance to recover it, to try to isolate it. And maybe you're doing blood cultures, right? And you do a gram stain and you see that there are gram positive cocci and gram negative rods, right? So you add a PEA for that same purpose, to give the gram positives a chance. So whether it's part of your standard workup, of cultures, or you're adding that PEA, right? So when you go to examine them after the proper incubation period, you get growth. And when you get this growth, thinking that it's a gram positive automatically, that's where you can go wrong. One thing, and maybe those of you that are seasoned techs and have been working on the bench for a while, you know this, but maybe if you're a student and you're listening, did you know that one organism that surprises people all the time is Pseudomonas aeruginosa? It actually tolerates the phenylethyl alcohol better than many other gram negative organisms, which means it can grow. And actually, you'll be surprised, it grows quite well on PEA. And that is actually helpful because, you go back to these mixed cultures, sometimes depending on what you have, and it's very common that if you have, multiple enterobacterialis, you kind of mix those, you release it as mixed gram negative flora or mixed enteric flora, depending on the source. So you don't work them up, like you don't do an ID on susceptibilities. But typically with your non-fermenters, you do. So maybe you have many organisms growing on all the media. Maybe the patient has a history of Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and you're trying to isolate it. So the PEA is a good place to look, right? In McConkey, sometimes you have multiple non-lactose fermenters, and it can get a little messy. But then you check that PEA, and then you have like those smaller white colonies. You do a gram stain, it's a gram-negative run, and then you subculture it, and there's your Pseudomonas. And this is something that I do when I'm trying to isolate a Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Maybe I'm seeing it on the blood plate, or maybe I'm seeing it on the McConkey. And then what I do is, like I sub it to a blood plate, and I also sub it to a PEA just in case. And, if you isolate it on blood, then you can go ahead and proceed and do your testing, your susceptibilities, your identification if you have to. But if you have it on PEA, then you will have to subculture it to blood. And then once you have that, then you can go ahead and do your testing. So remember that, Pseudomonas aeruginosa can grow quite well on PEA. It is a good way of trying to recover it, by using PEA. And also keep in mind that while PEA inhibits the growth of gram-negative rods, you do get some enterobacteriales that can grow in it. This happens, for example, with Proteus mirabilis, where you see like some small gray colonies growing on your PEA, and then you do a gram stain and it's a gram-negative rod, and then you subculture it, and then the next day you see swarming. So while it's intended to inhibit the growth, some can actually grow on PEA. Okay, so now that you know that, and I hope that you keep that in mind, I want to talk about PEA and morphology. So now you have that blade is growing, but you have to be careful about some things. In the lab, the PEA that we use, it has blood agar. So the plates look very similar as your TSA with blood. So when you're using PEA, make sure like you circle it. Somehow you indicate that you're using PEA. So whoever is reading, they can keep that in mind and they know that it's a PEA plate. And this is very important because morphology on PEA, it's different from morphology on blood agar. And I'm going to give you a great example, Enterococcus fecalis. By now you know that your classic Enterococcus, it's gamma hemolytic, your Enterococcus fecalis. You do have some strains that are beta hemolytic, but it's very common when you have Enterococcus fecalis on PEA that it looks beta hemolytic there. So be very careful because then you might think that you have beta hemolytic strep, and then you go ahead and do your typing and you can get some false results. That's one thing when you're doing Lancefield grouping, you should not do it from a PEA plate, right? You have to do it from a blood agar plate. And in the lab, typically people just circle the word PEA on the plate as a visual. So when you're looking at them, you're like, okay, this is PEA. But be very careful because that morphology can be misleading. Coagulis negative staph, sometimes, staph epidermidis, it looks beta hemolytic on PEA. So I really advise you, if you have moldy stuff, you have something from PEA, do a gram stain, put it on the moldy. But outside of that, I exhort you to, when you have things from the PEA, sub them to blood so you can see what they look like and do the proper testing. I remember a case, years ago where there was this scenario where there were some beta hemolytic colonies on PEA. The person didn't realize that it was a PEA plate. They did Lancefield grouping and they ended up getting positive for B. So it was called agalactiae. But at the end of the day, it was actually Enterococcus fecalis. So bottom line, beware of the morphology. They do not look the same. And you have to make sure that when you're doing your testing, you subculture it to a blood agar plate so you can see the proper morphology and do your testing. And definitely do not do Lancefield grouping on PEA, your Lancefield typing, because you can get erroneous results. So here are the takeaways. If it grows on PEA, it does not automatically mean it's a gram positive. Pseudomonas aeruginosa can grow well on PEA, and other gram-negative rods can grow on it, especially when it gets some enterobacteriales like Proteus mirabilis. Colony morphology on PEA may differ from blood agar, and Lancefield typing should never be done directly from PEA. So this agar is a recovery tool, and it does not replace the gram stain. And that, my friends, is your MicroMinutes episode. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I enjoy doing this content with you. I think it will be like it's a nice way to end the year with a very short episode to the point. So I hope you enjoy it. And of course, you can find us on all socials. If you go to Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Social, there we are as Let's Talk Micro. On X as Let's Talk Micro 1, LinkedIn as Luis Plaza. And there's an email address, which is letstalkmicro@outlook.com. And of course, the website, letstalkmicro.com. And in the website, you can find information on, episodes, study resources, like for your ASCP. and more. So I invite you to subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the website, download episodes, and if the app allows you to do so, please leave a review. You can find us on any podcast platform. So if you go to Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, Amazon Music, we are right there. So please subscribe. If you want to support us in any way, you can do so via Venmo or via Buy Me a Coffee, KOFI, both links available on the show notes. And if you're looking to learn more about antibiotics, please check out www.learnantibiotics.com and the Learn Antibiotics book available on Amazon. These resources include cheat sheets, practice test games, and more, and they are being used by thousands of people worldwide and may be helpful for you or your colleagues. As always, these are some great resources from Dr. Timothy Gauthier, a very passionate pharmacist. And of course, the Let's Talk Micro podcast is supported by the American Society for Microbiology. To learn more about microbes, visit asm.org. And that, micro friends, is the end of this episode. I hope you enjoy learning, about PEA. I hope you enjoyed this episode of MicroMinutes. As always, I enjoy sharing this information with you. And hey, this is the last episode of 2025. We're taking a break, and then we'll return in January with some great content. So it is a great time to catch up with some other episodes. Maybe check out the series sponsored by bioMario. Plenty of episodes. So maybe there might be a rerun here and there. But we'll return with new episodes in January. So I hope you enjoy your holidays. I hope you recharge, spend time with family and loved ones. It's always great. And please continue bringing that passion to what you do. It's so important. You do such great work. So happy holidays, friends. I'm so grateful for you. As always, stay motivated, stay safe, and of course, continue talking micro. Until the next time. Bye.